Yeah.
All right, so we've got, I think, almost everybody that is in. You'll have to unmute yourself. I mean, obviously, we can see names over, screens and images, but some of us are not on video, and others, are. So why don't we just go down the list? Candy, since you're holding the handset, I'll let you go first and say hello and introduce yourself, and then I'll keep managing the inbox. Oh, now we're on mute again with Candy. That's a false start.
All right.
There we go.
This is Candy Kaufman. I'm with the I have an echo. Texas Workforce Commission in Fort Worth, Texas.
Thanks, Candy. I guess I have to call them out, Kay, because they don't know. Gail?
Hi, I'm Gail Duggar. I'm with Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Alabama.
Emetheus?
I am Emetheus Hall. I'm with Medical Mutual of Ohio, healthcare insurance. So.
Jim?
Hi, I'm Jim Lavery. I'm with Teachers Federal Credit Union out here on Long Island, New York.
Amaya?
Good morning. My name is Amaya Mayette, and I'm with my own company and also working with Better Experience.
Peggy?
Hey, I'm Peggy Thompson. I work with Kay Jackson. Very happy to do so.
Heather?
Hello, Heather Pena. I work with Energy, an energy provider.
Amas?
Hi, everyone. Mas Tanuma. I'm a contact center consultant. Good to see some familiar faces and good to meet a lot of you.
Thanks, Amas. Bobby?
Hey, good morning. I'm Bobby Robinson with PetSmart.
And Latrina?
Hi, I'm Latrina Pearson with Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Alabama.
Okay, they're doubling up on us. Mr. Gilbert?
Hi, everyone. Bruce Gilbert, Chief Information and Technology Officer for YSTA Services and Young Energy out of Fort Worth.
And last but not least, Nancy.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Nancy Call, and I work with Lowe's companies.
Thanks, everybody. So now, obviously, we're recording this. Everyone will get the recording. You got the calendar invite. You kind of get a feel for who all the people are. Some of you are going to have members of your staff that are, probably have much more input onto this. But Kay and I really appreciate you taking time today to give us your input. For those of you who aren't familiar with how we run our focus groups, they're really to gather opinions of the membership, and whether we're designing a program, we're redesigning an event, we're going to be working on that, or we're concocting a new product or value add for membership. It's all should be focused on what you all feel needs to be done. We can't boil the ocean. We don't have unlimited resources, but we can certainly take our best first steps from what the membership feels important and build upon that. And that's the way field events were done. That's the way Executive Summit was done. That's the way the virtual town halls are trending. And that's the kind of information we try to gather for you. That's the content in the blog and so on and so forth. So in the spirit of all that, the focus groups are really just a great opportunity for you to give us your insights. That said, before I turn it over to Ms. Jackson here, if you don't give us any input, it's kind of a waste of time. So you've got to be able to jump in there and just, if we're going too fast, doesn't make sense, have some question at that point, just jump in. Don't be polite. Now, Catherine, take it.
Thank you. Okay, the project objectives, and this is really important. And again, like David said, please just jump in at any time. So what I'm going to do in the next couple of slides is just tell you what we're trying to do, how we think it's going to happen, that we need some help. And so you understand what kind of help we need and what the timeline might be. So what do we want to accomplish? Well, this all started in one of the CCNG virtual events, and we were talking about different KPIs, and a couple of us had talked about, let's really try and see if we can do some kind of simple database that we can collect some data and some demographics and be able to do some analytics. We're not, again, as David said, we're not going to boil the ocean. We're not going to be a benchmarking company. A lot of it started when I was trying to do a budget for a call center that I'm working with, and we needed a cost per minute. And it was really, really tough to find cost per minutes on any of the benchmarking sites or any of the research that I was doing. And so the thought came to me, well, what if we can enlist the CCNG members, and it's not going to be perhaps a statistically significant number that we can benchmark, but we can have a range and we can figure out, okay, this is what people are experiencing right now. So we've come up with initial things like the company names have to be blinded. Nobody wants to give us data and have their name associated with it right now, because we're all in different parts of our company and not being allowed to share data with other people. Demographics, well, this was a big one for all of us when we were talking about this. I don't know about you, but every time I have to do a research study or a benchmarking study, they ask for the same blasted demographics all the time. And so I have to spend time putting all of that back in. So the neat thing about the CCNG database is we'll only have to request demographics once. So it's not that pesky every single time they want to update the database or add a new KPI or metric. I've got the data in there, the demographics. And it has to be simple so our members don't hesitate to participate. So we've got to figure that out. And we've got to make sure that that bullet that's not there, we really need to make sure that the data that we enter is we have it defined so that we're always comparing apples to apples on a KPI. Any questions about that one so far? Great. So if you or someone on your team decides that you would be willing to volunteer and help this project, first thing is we've got to have fun. If it's not fun, don't do it anymore. I mean, all of us have incredible schedules and incredible things we're doing that, at some point we just got to start having fun. So when we are having fun, some of the things that we will do is we'll select the first demos, and I'll go into that a little bit, what that means. Select the first KPIs or the metrics that we want to collect, and I'll go into that in just a second. We've got to discuss what kind of database, what's the database we're going to use, determine who has some analytic skills. I love analytics, but I'm not a statistician. I remember when I was going through some of my degrees that every single time I got a degree, it was like, take these 15 statistics courses. And I took them, but I didn't like them. So I'm not volunteering for that part of this project. So I'm hoping some of you have some great skills, and I'm sure you do in your group. And then finally, once we get it up and running, to come up with some of the rules around it to determine when we want to add additional demographics, because people have asked us for that, and additional KPIs. So we'll keep it evolving. We're going to keep it simple at first, what we collect, and then let it evolve according to what team members want. So demographics. All of you know this, but I just want to make sure that it was on here. The demographics are what we'll use to slice and dice the data. So what will make it customized for different parts and different call centers? Like, what's the size of the call center? What's the location? What industry are you in? What channels do you have in your call center? What's the volume that you carry? And I mean, those are just examples. This team will determine what those demographics are. For example, there are call centers that out there that don't want to be compared to certain industries because they know their industry has specifics in the metrics. So that's why these are so important, that we come up with the first set of demographics that allow us to customize what the analytics are. We'll also determine how often we'll update or add new demographics. Any questions? Great. You guys are easy. So the metrics.
Be quiet for the entire time, though. I'm just warning you right now.
I know. We're going to call out. David's good. He'll call out names. I've seen him do that all the time. So the metrics, whoever volunteers for this will determine what the initial and ongoing metrics are. For example, service level. These are where we really get into how do we define these? How do we calculate these? So, I can ask everybody under the sun for their service level, but if I don't know how they calculate it, we can't do any comparison. So we've got to be good with how we define these things. Cost per X, satisfaction, quality. We'll determine which ones we want to roll out this program with. We'll determine how often, and we'll update or add new metrics. And this is David. I put a slide in for him.
With better hair.
So the database, and this is a big one again, we have to determine the best database that we can put the analytics in or the metrics in for the collections and the analytics. In addition, we've got to figure out where is it housed. I'm assuming it's going to be somewhere on the in CCNG. David and I were talking at one point, can we put it in such a place that any CCNG member who has access to it can input directly? Don't know if that's possible, but we're going to talk about how we would make that available to make it easy on everybody. So where is it housed and how is the data entered? We've got to try and figure those things out. Then we're going to talk about the analysis, which I spent a couple of seconds on, but who will be available to analyze the data? How will the analytics be provided to the participants? And how often will we update the analytics? So one of the reasons Peggy is on here is Peggy and I worked, I don't know if you've ever heard of the APQC, but it's a benchmarking service. And we did all of the call center benchmarking studies for the APQC. She is invaluable because she will be volunteering. She's an excellent writer, excellent editor, excellent to take all of the analytics and put them, if we want to produce reports, she's the one that can do that. So she can take everything we do and present it in a way that we can make it available to all the CCNG participants. So I really appreciate her willingness to come on and offer her skills once again to us.
I would also volunteer to be everybody's friend. I would like to get to know each and every one of you and be able to communicate with you and talk with you about any problem you might have and uploading any information or anything like that.
So I'm hearing tier 1 support. Is that?
That sounds good.
Yeah.
I like it.
Excellent.
And I have to tell you, she
volunteers
did.
for that. That's awesome.
Oh yeah, and she, in all of the benchmarking studies that we did, she did all of the interviews with people. So if we ever want to build this out so that we have quotes from people or any of that, she is marvelous on interviewing and collecting all of that kind of unstructured data, should we ever want to go down that path. So here's the big push. We're looking for volunteers. And so what are volunteers volunteering to do? So we need expertise to define initial demographics, initial metrics, the best database, and the available analytics expertise. Once we get that established and we start actually putting this thing together, we're going to figure out the best way to recruit members to provide the demos and the metrics, the rules as far as how often and what format will provide performance analytics. One thing we can consider is, can CCNG members come in and request a customized report? So we've got to figure that out. I think there's some value to that, but I think in the initial stage, it has to be basically a report off the, it's the easiest thing to do when you first start, is to have a non-customized report that is available to people. And then at some point, allowing people, like when I was doing the cost per minute, coming into David and saying, hey, I really need this data, can you provide it? And then how long the volunteers will serve and how to recruit new members. So that's what we as a volunteer are committing time-wise. It's tough to estimate what this is, but these first two are pretty easy to do. The hardest thing on the first two is the definition of the metrics. Identifying the metrics that we want is pretty easy. All of us deal with metrics day after day, but making sure we have the definition correct. By the way, a long time ago, my company, Response Learning, did a benchmarking much like this. It was called Leapfrog. And so we have a bunch of sample stuff that we can throw in. And I'm sure a lot of you have samples also that we can pick and choose. It's not like we have to create it from scratch. All of us has been doing this for years. The last two, the best database, Peggy did some initial research. I did some, but we really need to figure out a database that is not overly complex, but that can do the kind of cutting and slicing of data, collection of data, and analytics that we need it to do. And then we need to figure out the analytics expertise, who we have available, in order to be able to make the data available or the database available so we can produce the reports we need to produce for people. So that is probably, these two are going to be quote unquote fairly easy for us to do because we do it. It depends on who volunteers as far as how easily we can do these two things. I know we have a lot of tech people on here, so I think it'll probably be easy if we have some volunteers like that.
I'd like to hear what the group's reaction is to all that.
Yeah, please.
Starting with, is it a worthwhile venture? You know, if the group here decided if it was worthwhile, then why, and what are your reactions?
Please.
I have a question. Hi, this is Amaya. So, and this may be part of what gets figured out, right? So I'm happy if you're like, hey, we don't know, we've got to figure that out. But there are so many differences in how contact centers are, you know, managed, the costs, the service levels, the ins and outs. How will you be able to, or have you looked at this, benchmark with all of the information as to what's different or what's particular inside a benchmark?
Great.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Great question. And I'm going to parrot what you just said a little while ago. That's part of what we have to figure out. And so when we start on the demographics and we start on the metrics, this team has to hash that out. Now, again, Peggy and I have done some of this in our previous lifetime, but we don't want to impose anything. So I think the team has to be very good at dialogue and saying, this is what's important to me. This is where I've found other benchmarking studies haven't defined it well enough. And it really is gutting through what's the definition of the demographics, what's important in the demographics, what's important in the metrics like service level. What is service level? How are we defining service level? What is the calculation of service level? And making sure that when somebody enters that data into the database, it is apples to apples. Because that's the only way that we make the report valid when it comes out the other end. Does that answer for you?
Yeah, it does. And you may not be able to have a report, right? There may a report as in a simple numeric report. There may have to be, and you guys tell me if you've even looked at a range of, hey, here's service level, here's how it's defined, but here's all the different service levels that are currently being benchmarked versus everybody's doing it the same. So that, I just want to, I guess that's my question, right? Because very little, let me say it differently. Much of the magic of a contact center is not in easily numeric comparisons. So that's where, like, is there a space for things outside of numerics in this benchmarking adventure?
And what you have asked about is something that everybody involved in benchmarking asks about, which is, how am I ever going to benchmark against anybody? Because I'm so different. I just have problems that nobody else has. But a lot of times those problems get you further down the road when you say something like, I am different. So then we reach out to you at that point and say, okay, how are you different? And that's what comes up with best practices is you go beyond just the numbers and you reach out. Right. Why are you different? How are you different? What are you doing? Would you care to share that? So it takes you a step above just the numbers.
Yeah, I think at first, everybody, we need to say, what are the ones that don't take you into that contextual type of answer? The first thing I think we need to do is to figure out the simplicity of this, which says, what are the things we can define? How do we define ASA? You know, and then is it ASA by industry? It's those kind of things we need to find out. So hopefully we can find some metrics to begin this with, to just establish that this is valuable. And that's really the discussions we have to have on the metrics are, what are the valuable metrics that we can define that will be apples to apples? And then as we evolve and progress and have people input to us, you know, what are the differentiators that I have to pay attention to make this even more valuable? I don't want to overcomplicate this at first because we're going to go down a rabbit hole. But we definitely can as this thing evolves over time. Absolutely.
Hey, Kathy, could you go back to the purpose slide again? I'm sorry. The first or second slide, the purpose or the mission.
Excuse me while I scroll.
No, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Absolutely.
I just wanted to recap. Okay.
No, did you want?
Let me see.
Hold on a minute.
Purpose slide?
The objectives? Is this good?
Yeah, that's good. Okay, that's what I was looking. Okay.
What was your question?
No, I was just, when I was looking at it, I was like, okay, I want to make sure I'm understanding the purpose of what we're trying to accomplish as a team. And I got the you know, the benchmarking is what we want to do, but it's the goal for this. And I think I heard is to create a dashboard or some type of tool for CCNG members that they could go out to and look at different benchmarks, metrics, and analyze and see how their company compares based off what we collect. Is that the kind of purpose? Okay, got
Absolutely.
it. Okay, got it.
And again, to keep it simple at
Simple,
first
yes, I
and
agree.
let it evolve.
Let it evolve, right? Start off, you know, crawl before you walk, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I like it. Okay, yeah, I think this is good. This is good. Okay, thank you.
Good.
So a question.
Yes, please.
Did this effort, what kicked this effort off, right? Was it questions that CCNG was getting from their clients, from their customers? You know, what spurred the idea to create this database and to collect these KPIs?
Okay, before you answer your conversation with George, I will say, Nancy, that you know, over the past 30 years, we've seen a regular stream of inquiry where people get stuck and they think, I feel like we're doing it well, whatever it is, but what's everyone else doing? And the only way for CCNG to respond to that would be putting you, and we've done this for you, Nancy, putting you in touch with others that are trying to tackle the same issue. Again, this is not an apples to apples, but recall when we spoke in Q4 of 2019, you were relaunching your work from home program. You're like, wow, were you ahead of the curve right there? But you wanted to talk to 5 members, and I helped you speak to 5 members. The point being, the only way for you to do that was to kind of put a lot of time and energy into it. There are certain things that I think we could retain and track so that you could self-serve. And that, so this is bubbling up, has been bubbling up from the membership in a number of different areas. And Amethyst has hosted us and been at a meeting where these kinds of conversations happen in networking events. So we were just trying to come up with a way to automate some of that.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. And I could see the need for it. To your point, David, is that over the 5 years that I've been a part of CCNG, to your point, it's a matter of, hey, David, we're trying to look at getting rid of a scoreless, go to a scoreless QA, program. And I think you hooked Sherry Guzman at the time up with another organization out in Arizona. So there's no vehicle that we could just go in and look at benchmarks and kind of do it, be self-service versus constantly say, David, what about this? Or through our network. So I see the need for it, and I appreciate being a part of it.
And Kay, add your commentary.
Yeah, we were on a town hall, and I don't even remember what the topic was. Yeah, I don't remember, but I remember putting in the chat because I was going through the budget and the cost per minute. And I said, guys, I would love to start this in CCNG because I am constantly trying to find benchmarks when I'm working in the call center. And you can go out to 150 different research sites or, Google, what is a cost per minute or what is a cost per call? And it's all over the place. Or you get Google that says there are 15 different sites that are quoting the same thing, but you have no idea what's behind it. So everybody has the average cost per call is blah, 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 but you don't know the definition. You don't know who entered the data. That's the other thing we have to be careful of, that for those of you who have entered data into a research project, is we have to validate who's entering the data. Because I'll tell you, on my consulting side versus the call center that I'm managing, on the consultant side, I just want the data, and I'll usually use the call center that I'm managing's data in there. But a lot of consultants or vendors will input data that they think, is what is the average for someone, but it's not a validated entry. And so your data analytics get skewed all over the place, and you can't trust it. So we really need to make sure it's a database that is trusted, and that we validate the data that's being entered. And we can do that in multiple ways. But in the town hall, I know I start going off on different things, sorry. In the town hall, I put in the chat, I'd really like to have this available. And George from NiSource, right?
Yes.
Yeah, said he would love to be able, he was all for it. There were a couple of other people that said, yeah, let's see if we can do something like that. And so that was part, and then I went to David after that, and I said, I will be glad to help coordinate this and get the volunteers and add any expertise that I can, mostly Peggy at this point. But that's how it all came to be. So that's why we wanted to bring it to a larger group and say, what do you think?
Did that answer your question, Nancy?
Yes, thank you.
Sure.
I have a question. When we've done this in the past, we have said access to this database, the cost of admission to access to this database is your own participation in it. In other words, if you don't enter your data, you don't get to see anybody else's data. And I was wondering if this was going to be the rule going forward, or whether that this will be for all CCNG members.
No, are we at the point of answering that? I just wonder.
Well, I would say that this question is important, because a big tipping point for these databases is getting enough people to participate, so that the numbers that you have are meaningful. So so any encouragement you can have to have people give their data is worth it.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the, no, please go ahead.
No, sorry, I interrupted you, Peggy. Were you saying something?
No, Mas, please go ahead.
Oh yeah, what I wanted to contribute is perhaps maybe even lowering the bar even more, meaning having been a part and purchased really, really good benchmarking data that had a lot of thoughts similar to what Catherine was referring to. I found myself often disappointed in the really, really, really great ones by the professionals because of all of these things. How do you define first contact resolution? Are you using repeat rates? We can go on and on and on, and contact centers all like to do these very different things. So to me, I would be in favor of really starting even smaller than we've described so far, meaning an acknowledgement that we're not looking for even close to perfect data, directional, really lower the stakes, and then even lowering the number of metrics to start with, put in some barrier and say, let's try and figure out 2 of them, I'm making it up. And then if we feel like this is good, I think those 2 things, getting everyone in this vein of imperfect data, even the pros can be bad at this. And let's start with very, very minimalist, even red, yellow, green, very, very elementary, and then progressing from there, because I would just caution that this can quickly, again, I'm preaching to the choir to some of you, become a huge effort, and the return, as anyone who's ever done this, is just people yelling across the table from, yeah, it's not right because my day is this, that, and the other. So I think if we can lower the bar, that might be a good place to start.
Great input. Absolutely. David and I had talked about that too, is to start simple and start in a way that we can manage it and prove its worth to the rest of the membership. Absolutely. So I think you guys are the first, not a barrier, but in my mind, is it a go or is it something that it would be valuable? And then just as Amas just said, is let's make it as simple as possible to begin with and see if we can produce value and then evolve it slowly over time. Absolutely. Great input. What do others think about? What are some of the barriers you see to making this valuable? I think that's a good question. I'd love for you guys to answer.
I think this Jim, I think first of all, I love the concept. I love the idea, and I think there's a lot of value to it. I think it's going to be up to the team, whoever establishes this, to kind of create the value and have it evolve over time. So to your point, start small, grow bigger, build value, keep going from there, and kind of rinse and repeat as much as possible. The barrier might be the input, right? The level of attention people give to the input. The other barrier might be access to the data. So in my mind, one of the things I was thinking about was like, when I think about databases, and I don't have I'm not an IT person, but I've got a little bit of a IT bent in my background. And one of the things that I've learned over time is that the definitions are critical to the key elements, right? So whatever you're trying to pull in, make sure the definitions are there and make sure they're published, make sure they can be validated, all that kind of good stuff. However, when I say all that, I think about, in my shop here, we're on an old PBX, right? A really old one. So my report that I pull out of this thing, until we change it later in the year, but the report right now may be different. The definition behind the data points may be different than if you pull it out of a Genesis system or a 5.9 or something else. And not to say one's better than the other, but they're just all going to be a little bit different. And so to your point before about how do you get that data, you almost have to scrub it even further into what's the vendor defining their ASA as, or, are they including short calls or they're not including short calls, and
you're right.
Whatever you want. So the vendor, I think, will become maybe not a barrier, but at least an obstacle to overcome.
Great point. You're absolutely correct on how the vendor defines something in the report.
Yeah,
Great
if we get the
input.
broad data somehow, that'd be great, but that's not always available.
Hey, this is Gail Duggar. I have a question. Do we do we have any estimate of what the time commitment is for the participants on this?
Let me say that we will start with, and David, you're going to have to help me, but I would say to get the first part of let's look at what the demographics are and let's identify some KPIs. I would imagine that's about a 4-hour, and we can divvy it up any way we want. At the point that we have that, then we can start talking about the database and the analytics. We're going to have to refine the KPIs, but I think to get the 1 or 2 or 3 KPIs or metrics that we want to collect to begin with and define, I would say it's a 4 or 5 hour, and we'll go from there. And we can divvy that up in 1 hour increments or however people feel comfortable to do that.
But
Then obviously,
I'm assuming,
no, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm just assuming from the description of what's happening here that, this is a work group that's going to meet on a fairly continual basis. So I think I'm kind of trying to get an idea of the upfront commitment, which you've answered, but then also the ongoing time commitment.
The ongoing time commitment, that's where we can determine, does this team move it forward or do we want additional volunteers? And we will determine, is it a once a month? Is it once a quarter? Once we put this in place, it's how comfortable we are with keeping all of this updated and how often do we want to add something to it. So it could be as frequently as once a month. It would not be more than that. Or do we want to go to once a quarter?
It does. I think I think one of the things that we're going to struggle with a little bit is because obviously Lashrita and I are not really the experts to be on this panel. We're kind of, finding, doing a fact finding mission at this point. It would be, determining, of our folks who have these skill sets, how much time we can devote to this.
Great question. Good. I appreciate that input. David, you were going to say something?
No, just that I think, if you take 50 member companies and you get, a certain level of participation from the startup of the effort, it doesn't mean that those people have to remain involved.
Right.
We have the resources between all the member organizations donating, 2 or 3 hours each. It's just a matter of organizing that so that we put the best resource into the project at the best time. From my point of view, this call is it something worth launching? Because as Amos pointed out, it could quickly get out of hand. On the other hand, it could quickly be something that's not very valuable. What's your favorite color? And we all compare that. I mean, it's just, we got the data, but it's just not that helpful. So I think there's a couple of things. I think we do need to get, maybe the way to approach this is say we need a 5-hour commitment or whatever that number is from each of the member organizations to accomplish the following 3 or 4 things. So these are the type of people. And it'll be a Zoom call. It'll be 5 1-hour sessions or however we roll that out. Gives us a bit of a timeline. And at the end of that, this is where we expect to be. And then that's kind of phase 2. I learned a long time ago, the first question you ask when someone asks you to volunteer is, what's my exit strategy, right? So we wouldn't want everyone to feel like they're getting into something they can't get out of.
Right.
But it's a member benefit by members for members. And I think Peggy brought this up earlier also. I think we can be pretty successful at getting members to contribute their data. To Amithia's point is, I think the ease of that will really help move things along. So we have to set a target of getting 50% of the membership to contribute, and that might extend the timeline. So I know we've given you a lot of high-level answers, Gail, and nothing concrete. But really, it's a matter of, does the group as a whole want to launch something like this? And if so, we all got to have a little bit of skin in the game.
Yeah, if we,
to your point, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, David, for interrupting you.
I was just going to say, you just need to know what the skin is.
Yeah, I think if we can just get a commitment of, yes, this is something we think we should do, then David, Peggy, and I can come up with a proposal of what it means to do it. And to take that back to this group and say, here's what we see the timeline is, here's what we see the time commitment to be. So we didn't want to come out with a full-blown plan before anybody said go or no go. That was what is important. All of your opinion and to make that decision is what's really critical to us at this point. We don't want to do anything that's not valuable, but we want to take the next step if people think it is.
So I'm having a really hard time understanding or getting to the point of where I believe I would utilize the metrics and the data. And David, I know that we've partnered for several years now, but the information that I usually am inquiring on or am in need of is really more conversational based, right? It's about what is your strategy and what is your approach in a specific area? Because I have a target for my ASA. I know what I need to run, and it's based on the data that I have collected in my contact center over years, and it's based upon the customer experience that I expect to deliver, and a lot of factors that go into that. So I guess that's where I'm just having a problem, is figuring out how do we go from metric driven, because I'm not sure I need help there, because I know what my metrics are and what the SLAs are and what I'm driving to. And maybe other members would get benefit from that, right? If they're not in the same place I am on my journey. But in order to get members to input that information and to share that information, what is going to be the value, because if the members have that information and they have good data analytics around it, then those are going to be the companies that don't need access to that type of information, I guess, is where I'm struggling a bit. And I may be the only one. If I am, I'll be quiet.
Well, that makes sense, Nancy. I think that's fair. I think that's a fair feedback because to your point, many of us has been in the call center industry for years, and we have the benchmarks, and we look at what we do and set our targets. So that's I could totally understand why you would have that comment.
Yeah, I do too. And I appreciate what you said, Nancy. And I'll just throw out one perspective because I'm 6 months into a new role out here in Long Island. I moved here from Arizona, and so I walked into the doors here with an old system. I've already mentioned that. I won't go into all the details, but the value that I think having vendor agnostic data, such as a database like this, would help me create my business cases that I need to get a new phone system. We don't need to be at this certain service level. We should be at this one competitively. You know what I mean? Like, you kind of bring in that data. I have the knowledge already. I believe I do. That's why they hired me. But I think having that data behind it helps to say, oh, I've got a contact networking group. They're agnostic for vendors, but this is the data that they show from a, East Coast, service level, tolerance levels, whatever we pick, kind of thing. There'd be a lot of value to be able to kind of throw that into the database or into the business cases. So from my perspective, I'm kind of eager to get this data, but I also realize what you're saying is like, once I have it, I don't know how often I need to go back to it. You know what I mean? Like I'll have it at that point, but it'll change and evolve. So maybe there will be a need.
I think I see value in it. I really do, because people always look out and see what other people doing, to your point, Jim, for providing case studies or making recommendations to VPs or whoever it may be. I think the demographics that we're looking at, or the metrics that we're looking at, I wonder if we should take a different, and I'm just throwing this out, a different approach. And I know we're not at the selecting the metrics, but should we be looking at attrition or starting pay versus call center metrics? Those are the things that I think will add more value, because those things change on a more frequent basis. So when you're looking, when I'm looking at, okay, hey, every year we look at cost of living adjustments, or every 2 years, what is the industry doing versus our service level? Because that stuff is that's standard, or abandonment rates. Those are kind of standard things. I think it's more of I think I want to say like I say, starting pay, attrition, what's happening. Those are some benchmarks that I would like to see, and I can see more value at versus the cost of the metric.
Can I add one thing? Because as I'm right with you, Nancy, and Jim, and Amethius, I think I'm saying.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay. Because what y'all are describing is the dichotomy between the art and the science, right? So there's a science to contact centers, which has, it's the black and white, it's the cost per, even including attrition, right? The art of it, though, is what makes, that's the root. You can have your costs and your KPIs, your numerics, but to really take something beyond the norm is the art. So I don't know if there's an opportunity to actually differentiate, right, between the science and the art, even so that anybody could see, because the art has to do with harnessing the spirit of the people and culture, and how the mission and how you harness people and human behavior in conjunction with AI and tech and all of that. And there is a definite need. There's an unmet need for the art, for sure. And there's still, as Jim was talking about, there's the basics when you're going from horse and buggy, to a Tesla, right? Like, you got to know how to be able to enroll people and to be able to say, look, these are the industry numbers. But that by itself just gets you to basics. It doesn't get you delivering customer experiences that people will stay with you forever. So sorry, that's just my passion soapbox, but I could hear it all in your.
No, great input.
I think for me, I mean, I'm just kind of been listening to everyone and I see the applications and I also kind of echo the struggle to visualize the end product and how we'll hurt all these cats, because I know for NRG, you know, we've got 7 brands and under those brands, we've got different lines of businesses, and just getting all of that to agree internal for us is a challenge. So imagining totally different lines of business, that just, you know, I'm just having a hard time visualizing. I'm glad to contribute and participate, but I've kind of looked at the project roles and I'm not seeing myself like fitting into any one of those specifically. So, yeah, it's interesting though. I'm interested to see what happens.
Thanks, Heather. That's good.
Bruce, you want to throw in your 2 cents before we wrap
I'm
up?
not sure if my 2 cents are going to be very valuable. You know, I'm
Yeah,
on the
keep in
IT
mind, this is a
side.
technical guy. Bruce is
Well,
a chief
exactly.
technology officer. So
I'm a technical, technology guy. So the metrics really don't do anything for me. The metrics don't matter to me. I don't care what the average hold time is or the average service time. That doesn't impact IT. That impacts, customer care and sales. I don't know if Ray is on. I think he was invited, but he may not have made it. I think that the KPIs with the metrics are more important for someone like Ray. For me, I can offer, to help whoever decides that they want to build the database or, the analytics piece of it. I can help from a technology standpoint. There are a lot of questions you still have to ask yourself, and you've asked some, what are the KPIs going to be? How are you going to define those? How are you going to capture those? Who's going to enter them? And then once you have the database, how are you going to present the data to the analytics platform? What platform is that going to be? Are you guys still using Salesforce, David?
no, at your recommendation, we punted.
Don't put that on me. If it was successful, then sure, I'll take credit for it. It was $1 million mistake for us. So, so that makes it, not necessarily more difficult, but if you're still on the Salesforce platform, they have a lot of tools that would allow you to do that. So, Microsoft has Azure. You can do a SQL database. You can do, there are 100 different ways you can do the database. Then you have to decide what your analytics platform is going to be. Microsoft has Power BI, Salesforce has Einstein, or they kind of rebranded into Tableau. And something else that you probably have thought of, but I didn't see mentioned on here is, what is the budget for this? You're going to have to pay for a database. You're going to have to pay zero.
No. I understand when you say budget, I respond with cost per membership, right? So careful what you ask there. But these are points I asked Kay exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Same thing. Can't get into something that's totally unaffordable, but things have changed since you and I talked about Salesforce in terms of what's in the market. And it's probably the wrong thing to say, but we'll just put it into Chat GPT and it'll all be fine.
Yeah, they'll figure it out.
That may solve all of our problems.
In fact, I did put what's the best database into Chat GPT, and it was an interesting response. I wanted to see what they said.
Yeah, I mean, you would get, if you asked 25 different people, you would get 25 different answers. So
yeah.
Well, you've given us a lot to think about, Kay. You
Yes.
want to summarize here?
Well, I think a lot of it I have to put back in your court, David, as far as, when do we want people, do we get a consensus that we should at least take the next step right now? And if so, then how do people volunteer? Let's put out a plan that gives more specifics about commitments, timeline, that kind of thing. But I think how do we get consensus right now, whether we want to move forward with?
Generally speaking, though, group, do you think it's at least taking the next step and trying to determine if it's a worthwhile project? I mean, from what you've heard, I know, Heather, I understand what you've said, and
Absolutely.
and I understand kind of Jim on the other side. It's a frustrating thing to be in a position of knowing all these people and knowing they've all got tremendous resources and have, to some degree figured it out for themselves. But the only way I can help, and NiSource asked this, someone who says, how do we look compared to, is to say, I don't know, call Jim, ask him. And when you're done asking Jim, call Emetheus, then ask him. It just seemed like there's got to be a better process than purely manual. And again, to Nancy's point, there's a lot of things that have to be discussed strategically and whatnot.
Absolutely.
But I really believe there's a couple of basic things that we can start tracking. We've been asked time and time again, what's the number one call platform or telephony platform within the database? Can't answer that. So to Emetheus's point, maybe there's some little broader categories trying to nail down for people. But I know one thing I've learned from you all over 33 years is don't build it and then ask you if it has value. Ask you if it has value and then try and go down that path, because it's a waste of time to go the other way.
My vote is it's worth a prototype or a pilot, whatever you want to, however you want to call it, to give it some kind of first glance. If there's not a lot of expense to it, maybe not a lot of time, but it's, at least kind of get the feel out there. That's my point, but I realize, others will have different opinions for sure, but I think it's
Okay.
worth the effort for sure.
Good. Thumbs up or thumbs down on you. Use your reactions, everybody. Those of you who use Zoom all the time. Thumbs up or thumbs down.
And I probably just need a little, can I think about it and get back
Absolutely.
Let me think about it, because I was thinking of something else when I jumped on, and as we talk, I just need another day if that's okay.
So, all right, well, let's not drag this on any longer, okay? If there's nothing else, we can wrap it up.
No, but you'll take control of trying to get consensus or up or down?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
great.
Yep.
Perfect. Guys, thank you so
very,
much
very
for your
much for
time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great input.